for new real estate brokers or anybody that's curious about what it's like to be in real estate to get started, what kind of lifestyle and just everything about being a realtor, I think that's interesting because I have a lot of clients that are like, hey, what's it like?
Mm-hmm.
I've been thinking about a second career or whatever.
I love homes. I want to be a realtor.
I love homes. That's the typical
Okay.
line. And I always tell people, oh, it's not about homes.
No.
It's about people.
Exactly.
But I want to just ask you a bunch of questions and talk about how you got your start. And now there's a street sweeper coming by, but it snowed.
That's a fun job. I would love that job. Oh my gosh.
It's awesome. So yeah, tell us how you got started, what it was like. Did you have a side hustle? Because you can't just start selling real estate and then boom, all of a sudden you're making money.
Yeah.
So
Real estate's my third career outside of university. My first career, I worked for a student travel company, and I would organize for American high school students to travel to Europe. And then for specific schools, I would tour guide for them, mostly in Spain, because I lived for a number of years in Spain and used to live as a kid on and off in the Canary Islands. That's for another day. Student travel, 7 years, moved to Atlanta to run an office for the company in Atlanta. Became very good friends with a local church pastor who started basically a fair trade coffee operation in Rwanda. And that really caught my interest. And my wife was like, hey, you're gone all the time in Europe. Can you please find a job that keeps you here in Atlanta?
gotcha.
So I was starting to think about real estate, more commercial real estate. Growing up in Manchester, England, we have a ton of warehouses and old factories, and it was always my dream to develop those properties into lofts that people lived in. I think I watched too many episodes of Friends, right? So I was sort of exploring that commercial real estate idea. My friend had this coffee company, needed some help. So I said, right, I'm getting out of the world of student travel. I will help you with your fair trade coffee idea, this harebrained idea of getting Hutus and Tutsis in Rwanda after the genocide, working together, growing coffee, healing. I thought it was a bunch of malarkey, but I liked the guy. Well, I sort of stepped into this role to help build this coffee company for him and put systems into place and strategies. And the darn thing just took off. And it was pretty amazing. Suddenly I'm in Rwanda working with these coffee farmers, and I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get into real estate? So I did that for 7 years, built some amazing relationships, made a pretty big impact, I think, in some of these rural communities in Rwanda. Also taught a lot of people back here in America about the importance of supporting trade and quality products from developing countries. But after about 7 years, I felt like our time was up in Atlanta. And my wife, born in Buffalo, raised in California, was like, I want us to go somewhere else. So we looked at Asheville, North Carolina. We looked sort of at Portland, Maine a little bit. We didn't really consider going back to California. And we ended up in Fort Collins. And it was like, oh my gosh. Fort Collins has this historic downtown that kind of reminds me of some of the towns I grew up in England. It's near the mountains. It's got history. It's got culture. My wife loved it. There was a fish and chip shop, an English pub. I mean, it was like God did this just for me. So we moved here with the premise of growing the Rwandan Coffee Company. Fort Collins was very locally minded. Atlanta was very would support anything. Fort Collins, not so much. And without actually having sort of a brick and mortar operation in Colorado, I couldn't get the support for the coffee company that I got for it in Atlanta. So a friend of mine said, sounds like you starting to look at different work opportunities. I said, yeah. He said, have you thought about real estate? I said, that's so funny because I was going to get into commercial real estate in Atlanta. It never happened. Maybe that's what I should do here. So I met with another realtor, had a chat with him and thought, okay, I can do this. Went to real estate school, passed the exams. The whole time I was still working for the coffee company. So that was kind of my side hustle.
Yeah.
I never liked that term, but that was sort of paying the bills. And then ultimately I just said, right, I have to put 2 feet into this. Unfortunately, my wife was making a reasonable living. She was covering the nut, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I joined a larger national company with a good local presence. Really enjoyed the managing broker there. But I was going into this office every day. And you ever seen the movie The Full Monty?
Yes.
Where the executive guy can't tell his wife that he lost his job. I felt a bit like him. I was coming in and I was like building a Facebook page. And I didn't know anybody in Fort Collins, right? I was pretty new here. I knew maybe like 2 people. And things weren't going great. I mean, months were going by and I was still bringing in some income from the coffee company, but I wasn't selling real estate. And I made a number of mistakes. One night I went to bed and somebody had recommended a book to me, and I think it's called, can you check this for me while we're talking? I think it's called Anything You Want.
Okay.
Or Everything You Want. And I don't love the title of that book, but it's a very short book, and it talked about how if you help people...
Derek Sivers.
Anything you want. There you go. Yeah.
I read that.
It talked about if you help people, then that will help grow your business. Go in with a mindset of, I'm here to serve you, as opposed to, I need to sell you a house. I need to buy you a house. And it completely reworked how I thought about real estate. So I was set on a mission to, how can I bring value? How can I help people? Took off from there. I was on the playground at my kid's daycare, and the lady next to me was saying how she was moving to Canada and her husband was leaving and she didn't quite know what to do. And I said, hey, I'm a newer realtor. I've got a lot of time here. What do you need help with? And she's like, well, I don't even know how to store the furniture. I don't know how to get a cleaning company in. I don't even know what a house needs to look like before it goes on the market. And I said, I'm going to be your one and only client. Let me help sell your house. And I turned into like Cinderella. I'm like cleaning baseboards and I'm bringing in bits of furniture from my own house for photographs, because this was before staging was kind of really a big thing. And we put a house on the market, and it was a challenging sale. I mean, I was new, so I was still sort of learning my craft, but it wasn't a great time to be selling real estate either. But I learned so much from that experience. And we sold that house, and that lady told all her friends about the realtor who came in and cleaned her oven at 2 a.m. No joke. Now, if you're watching this...
Wait, why 2 a.m?
Because we were about to close the next day, and the buyer did the walkthrough and was not happy with the condition of the oven. I couldn't get a cleaning company out, so I went in at 2 a.m. and I scrubbed her oven for her. Now, again, 14 years later, I have done similar things, but I'm not doing that on a regular basis. But throughout my career from that point on, I've always thought, how can I bring extra value? How can I fill in the blanks? How can I make somebody feel 100% comfortable? And how can I do more than the average realtor? So that was back in 2012.
Okay.
I did 7 years with Coldwell Banker. One of the defining moments in my career was my managing broker, also called Ryan, found a video online of me in Rwanda. And I would make videos in the coffee villages and send them to our biggest supporters, whether they were coffee shops or nonprofits, and say, hey, I want you to see what your coffee drinking is doing. Not only is it great coffee, but you helped build this home.
Wow.
Here are 2 people that at one point were at war that are now working together. And that massively helped grow the coffee company. And Ryan, my managing broker, said, you need to do these videos for real estate. I'm like, okay, what do you mean? He's like, do property videos. So this was, again, back in 2012, and people weren't doing property videos. And I started to do them, and they were going up on Facebook. And I think other people that I knew and started to know in town and grow a relationship were seeing a realtor do something just a bit different, a bit more than what anybody else was doing.
Yeah.
And we're not talking about high-end homes here. I would do property videos on all my properties, but I would make sure first that we brought in the correct contractors that they needed. If we needed a plumber, if we needed the carpets replaced, we would get the home looking its absolute best as we could within their budget. I stopped bringing in furniture from my own house and started to build a warehouse full of staging furniture. I mean, I have 120 plastic plants. I have 5 sofas. I have 5 dining room tables. I have inflatable beds, headboards. I mean, it's pretty impressive when you walk in there. And I started to build this collection of staging furniture. Or, I would have a professional stager come in and bring their furniture if needed. And I think the Northern Colorado real estate community started to see that I was doing things a little differently. Now, one day I overheard a couple of realtors in a restaurant make fun of me. They were like, who does he think he is? He thinks he's the guy from Lifestyle of Rich and Famous. And I wear my heart on my sleeve, and that really, really hurt me.
Huh.
However, here we are in 2026. Those realtors aren't around anymore. Because you know what? They were doing nothing special, nothing extra to help their clients. I think in 14 years, maybe there's only 3 listings out of the hundreds that I didn't sell. And there were specific reasons for that. So I feel like I came in at a really good time to real estate. I brought something a bit different, a bit fresher, a different attitude. And, now if you don't video at home, you're in the sin bin, right? It's almost considered like you have to video a home. Still, a lot of realtors don't do it. Blows my mind that they don't. But that's way become the norm.
Yeah.
So I'd love to know what those realtors that made fun of me are doing today.
Yeah. Okay, so how long do you think? So you got the first client,
Mm-hmm.
and then, but one deal a year is not enough to live on. I know your wife was she was making it happen. She was paying the rent.
Yep.
So how many deals would you say you did your first year licensed?
I did 11 deals.
You did 11?
Year.
That's pretty good.
I was Rookie of the Year for the
Were you?
Fort Collins.
Nice.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep. Like I say, I wear my heart on my sleeve, so I had to get up there and make a speech, and how I held it together, I have no idea. And I was Coldwell Banker's rising star, I think, for that year as well.
So how did those first 11 deals in that, was it all just kind of scrappy stuff like that? I mean, were you marketing yourself? Were you calling your sphere of influence saying, I'm a realtor now?
Well, there was no sphere of influence.
Right.
I literally knew 2 people.
Okay.
But as I would bump into people in the community, I'd be like, well, what do you need? What do you need help with? And word just kind of spread, especially from that first seller, who told her friends, and her friends then hired me. And then I'd take my kids to a little coffee shop in Fort Collins. It was like a play place coffee shop. I think it was called Cool Beans.
Okay.
Gina Tucker owned it. Gina, if you're watching this, hire. And I had a background in coffee, and Gina was having some problems with coffee, and I just talked to her about coffee. Said, I'm now a realtor, but I still know a lot about coffee. A couple of months later, Gina called me and said, hey, thanks for all that help you gave me with my coffee company. Can you sell our house for us? I said, yeah, absolutely. And then Gina told her friends about the realtor that came in that made sure the house looked as pristine as it could. And her husband knew that I was fairly new, and I priced the house, and her husband said to me, think you're overpricing this house? And I was like, ooh, okay. All right, well, let's have a plan in case I am. But we got 2 offers the first day on the market, and that was back in 2012.
Wow.
So all my business, I mean, not all, but it's like 95, 96% is referrals. And then sometimes somebody will find me on the internet and say, hey, I read your reviews on Google, I watched your videos, and they come to me, it's brand new, right? No relationship. But then most of my other clients, past clients, refer me to their friends, and then my past clients see our podcasts, right? And see my real estate videos, and that helps keep top of mind as well, I think, and bring some extra value.
Yeah. So you were just trying to be helpful. You weren't saying necessarily like, how can I help with real estate? You're just trying to be just friendly, helpful.
Yeah.
And that put 11, doing that was kind of 11 deals. And then referrals just, I guess when you do go over the top with the level of service, the referrals can get pretty impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the next clients were from my kids' school. So, I'm a pretty outgoing person. So I'd say hi to everybody, in line at kindergarten every morning. We were chatting, ask them how they're doing and
Sure.
what was going on in their lives. My next client, Dan, we went into his house and we put together a list of 260 things that he had to do to get the house ready. Now, not all of those things were painting and cleaning, but like he had 52 pairs of jeans. I kid you not. This guy had more pairs of jeans. I'm like, man, you got to show some space in your closet. Your closet right now, it's a big closet, but it's overwhelming to walk in here. So we did so much prep on that house, and we sold it first day on the market. So I always say, and I say this to new realtors, bring value every way that you can. And sometimes I'll walk into a house for sale and I'll look at the realtor on the sign. I'll be like, okay, I know what to expect here. And you walk in the house and it's just like, how are you expecting anybody to pay full price for this house or to go to multiple offers? You have literally done nothing to get this house ready, and it will sit.
Yeah.
It will take time. Even if you just recommended this or recommended that, it's going to help. I have a trailer, right? I'll take my trailer to a client's house and say, okay, fill us with all your junk. Put your junk in here.
Yeah.
We'll get down to the dump. I'll just send you a Venmo for whatever it costs to drop it off at the county. That's been super helpful as well. So just do what you can other than being the realtor that comes, has you sign a listing document and you put a sign in the yard.
Yeah.
And sadly, there's too many of those.
That's really important to talk about because there are people get focused on, okay, let's, the marketing that we're doing for the house, and they get focused on the house itself, but there's so much that surrounds the real estate process. People get really overwhelmed and they're asking you about, okay, do I need to do this repair, and who do I hire for that? And really it's, you're coming in with kind of a suite of, look, everything that you're going to have to do, I've got an answer for you. I've got a person for you. I'm going to tell you if you need to do it or not to do it. And that's a different level. I think people can feel really taken care of, or they can kind of feel like they're sort of blowing in the wind.
Well, these days, when you need to get work done on a house, a lot of people just go to the internet.
Yeah.
And they'll choose the first couple of companies that they see on Google. And those companies, yes, they can come out in 30 minutes and get something fixed for you, but they're charging you double. Where most good realtors have a mental Rolodex of people that just, again, like them, work off referrals, right? HVAC guys, plumbers, painters that don't need to advertise because they do such a good job and they make themselves readily available that they can just work off referrals, which is great.
Yeah. What are some things that you would do different if you could do it again?
That's a great question. I didn't understand the importance of networking with other realtors when I first got started. I thought the most important thing was getting out there to find buyers and sellers. Now looking back, if I'd built some closer relationships, there may have been some people that would have taken me under their wing and given me some opportunities and showed me the ropes. Probably should have got more involved with the board of realtors. We have a phenomenal board of realtors here that have, both our and the public's back. There's definite value to that. And there's all sorts of meetups that you can go to help get started.
Yeah. I think that's really powerful. I have been really surprised at how much business I get from other realtors, especially since we started doing content, making podcasts and doing social media videos, because I feel like a lot of other realtors are probably more interested in what we're talking about because we're talking about real estate, and the average person is not buying a house every year. So they might scroll past, but a real estate broker is pretty interested. And I'm just always amazed that people are like, hey, it's just for whatever reason, I can't handle this deal. Would you handle it? And that's been super cool to see. So yeah, I totally agree. I think realtors are often like, other realtors are competition. But man, it's super powerful to network with people and just to be able to talk to agents about
Yeah.
a property, of like, hey, this is your wheelhouse, this property in this neighborhood. You sell a lot of them. Like, can you talk to me about it? And being able to pick up the phone and get people on the phone and talk through that stuff is super powerful.
There's a lot of community amongst realtors
There are.
in Fort Collins.
It's very different than Denver. I
Right.
don't,
Yeah.
you don't have that. And Denver agents will talk about how different it is. And
It's cutthroat
yeah,
down there. And Denver agents are very happy to come up to do business in Fort Collins, which I think they only do because maybe they need a paycheck.
Yeah.
I've been there, I get it. But I think it's really important to list where you live.
Yeah.
And not to stretch yourself. It's very, very rare that I'll work outside of Northern Colorado. When I've done it, it's only because I've done it for a long time client who may be leaving the community and knows me, trusts me, and I'll help them then. But if somebody calls me and says, "Can you please sell a home for me in Lodo?" I'm like, "No, but I know some really good realtors in Denver that can do that for you."
Yeah. Let's talk about the lifestyle. I think people like the idea of being their own boss, being an entrepreneur, the kind of unlimited income potential. But the lifestyle, I think, is something that people don't think about a lot. I think especially when you start to get really busy, it can be a 7-day a week kind of a deal. You're always on call. When you leave for vacation, you have to get your business handled. You can't just leave. If you're in Mexico or wherever and somebody needs to write an offer on a house and it has to happen today, that's a tough spot to be in. So maybe you could talk a little bit about just that dynamic and how you think about your life as a realtor that's doing very significant amount of business and what that takes.
I would hasten to use the word lifestyle because that sounds like something off one of the TV shows. It's more like, how do you handle the work-life balance? And it's incredibly challenging. It really is. When you become successful in this industry, the expectation is that you work every day of the week. If you call my phone and you get a voicemail, it specifically says, "Hey, if you're calling at this time of the evening, chances are I'm with my family. I'll call you right back." When I sit down with my clients initially, I talk to them about work-life balance. And I ask them, when is it good and not so good to reach out to you? When are you available, not available? I'll tell them if I have an out-of-state trip coming up. So you try and plan ahead as much as possible. Doesn't always work. You and I were just chatting. I'm gone for a few days in spring break. Not an entire 7 days. And I've called a couple of my other realtor friends. Well, they're also gone as well. Plus, spring break is a terrible time to put a house on the market because a lot of people are gone, but there's always the one client.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, what do I do? So, I would, some advice to newer agents, I would say form relationships and partnerships earlier on. It doesn't have to be a partnership, but it can be a kind of a buddy-buddy situation. And you trade maybe a week on, week off, vacation time, that kind of thing, because it is hard to go away. And then with modern day technology, you can call people, you can text them, you can instant message them, you can email them. It's like from all sides, right? And I had somebody say today, "Well, I sent you a message on Instagram." Like, seriously? Did you send me a carrier pigeon too? Could you just, when you didn't hear back from me within, 24 hours, could you just have called me? So, I think I'd like to use the word controlling expectations and setting boundaries because boundaries are healthy.
Yeah.
And on my contracts with my clients, it's like, please do not text or call me before 8 a.m. unless it's urgent because I'm making breakfast for my son. I'm feeding my dogs. I'm getting out the shower, right? I am a human being like you, right? I don't just wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning and jump on my computer.
Yeah.
So please be mindful of that. But I tell them if it's absolutely urgent, then yes, obviously I get it.
Yeah.
But otherwise, let's kind of be respectful of each other, and let's not let technology rule our lives.
Yeah. Let's talk about, you and I are getting a little older. I feel like retirement has been on my mind more than it has as a younger man, and I'm sort of interested to think, on the one hand, this seems like a great job to do into retirement if you wanted to, right? If you wanted to continue to work, older you get, the more deals you've done, the more the referral flywheel is spinning, and you're always going to be able to have an income doing that. But how are you thinking about that? Do you think you will retire? Do you think you'll always do a little bit of real estate? I can imagine it's a difficult trap to be in because, like with money, it's never enough, right? And if you're saying, okay, I'm retired, but then people start to call you and say, hey, Robert, I want you to sell this house. It's another commission that you could put in the bank. I mean, I could see a scenario where it's hard to retire because you've got so many people that are so used to working with you, and it's hard to turn all that down.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we have to provide for our families, right? So that's important, and we want to be able to retire and have money in the bank to do that. I'm 49, coming on 50 this year, so I think I'm a few years away from retirement. I'd probably like to get to the point where I'm just working with people that I really, really, really like, that have a mutual respect. We have a mutual respect for each other, that they know I've been doing this a while now. I'm probably going to start to mentor a couple more people coming up. I'm going to need them to do things the way that I do them, and that's hard for a lot of people, right? They're going to say, well, I don't want to do that. Okay, then maybe we're just not a right fit for each other, because there's a certain expectation that my clients have from me that have worked with me in the past, and I need you to not only meet that same expectation, but maybe beat that expectation. So I think in the next couple of years, I'll be starting to look for somebody that can come along and partner with me. And then, I mean, can you ever fully retire, right? Some of the sharpest people that I know who are seniors are still working and are amazing at what they do. And when they talk, I listen. I sold a house recently to a gentleman in his 80s, this Australian gentleman, and just every time this man opened his mouth, I just soak up what he'd tell me. Just soak up. I mean, he's so wise and so knowledgeable. And I think one of the reasons he's as sharp as he is in his 80s is because he's continuing to work. I don't think he's every day at his desk.
Yeah.
So, will any of us fully retire? Should any of us fully retire?
Yeah.
I don't know what I'd do.
Yeah. It's fascinating to me because I've been thinking a lot about this, and I have some people that have retired recently, and man, it's shocking to them how difficult it's been, especially the first year. And yeah, what do I do? And, how do I spend my time? I think it's going to be great to go sit on the beach, but I think the hard thing is, how many friends do you have that are in that same space where they can go do all those things that you could potentially do, right? You don't necessarily, I don't know, it depends on who you are, but yeah, I think the other thing about, if we're not trying to save so aggressively because we don't necessarily need to stop working at age 60 and then live for 30 years on, retirement savings, right. It frees you up a lot. I've thought about that with my business. Man, if I don't have to hit certain retirement target because, yeah, I probably do want to keep working a little bit later than I thought, then I've got more income that I can potentially, invest in my business and hiring people. And you can just, be more aggressive with, and just take more vacations, right? Because you're not guaranteed to even live to retirement. So
right.
You got kids right now. Hey, let's live it up right now. I mean, my wife's like, "Hey, do you want to go do this year?" And we start to plan our vacations, and I'm like, "Yes, let's do that. Yes, let's do that." And there's a freedom in not having to rat hole that much money to live on for 30 years.
Well, I've certainly got a couple of passion projects that at some point I want to roll out, and I keep on talking about them, usually after a couple of glasses of wine. And everybody else who's also had 2 glasses of wine is like, those are amazing ideas. But I can't do it while I'm working full time in real estate. Because full time in real estate
Yeah.
isn't 40 hours, it's 60, 70, sometimes 80 hours a week.
Right.
So those are definitely on. I've definitely got to start to put some ideas down on paper for them. They're all up here right now.
Sure.
And then travel, right? I used to be a tour guide in Europe, and there's places in the world that I just got to see. I got to see the pyramids.
Mm.
I'm desperate to get to Japan. I want to go see a sumo tournament in Japan.
Yes.
Growing up in England, Channel 4 used to show the sumo tournaments. We only had 4 TV channels, right, in England for the longest time.
Wow.
And they would show sumo wrestling, so I grew up watching that.
That's cool.
So yeah, there's definitely some things that I have to do.
Yeah.
And like you say, we're not guaranteed to make it to retirement. I just had reconstructive hip surgery at 49 and spent a lot of the last 6 weeks confined to my house.
Right.
And that kind of made me realize I got to get out there a bit more.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it's tough. The work-life balance thing, I think, what things I've noticed that I think people don't always think about is when you're working for somebody else, it's easier to go home and to shut things off. And when you own a business, man, the wheels are always turning, and I find myself like I'm always thinking about how to market, how to grow, what the next idea is. And then that is kind of one part of my job, and the other part of the job is doing transaction work. And the combination of those two things is a pretty big cognitive load, right?
With 3 kids climbing.
With 3 kids. And yeah, you just, and it's interesting to hear the take on retirement. I think that's definitely super important. But also, like, a lot of what I think about is what is enough, right? And you get what's the term for it? They call it hedonistic adaptation, where the more money that you make, the more you spend, right? And when you reach a certain level, that money's accounted for, and you always want more and more. So that's something I've thought about too, is like, it is okay to kind of just not necessarily have your foot on the gas all the time.
Yeah.
And there's we have the hustle culture thing, right? You spend a lot of time on social media, and if you're interested in business, man, that algorithm will feed you all the people that are like more, hustle, hustle, hustle. It's great. And it's cool to make money, right? It's powerful. It's empowering. You can change the lives of your family and the lives of people around you. You can employ people, and that is all great. But sometimes I'm like, man, I also want to have an idea of what's enough.
Yeah. I don't know. I have that conversation with my wife all the time. I'm like, do we have enough? Sadly, growing up, my dad lost his business in the 90s, and my dad lost his home. My dad was homeless for a while, and I was living over here when that happened and trying to figure out how to help my dad. And I was in a very, very early on in my 20s, so I wasn't making much money. So that drives me a lot. And my wife says to me, Robert, we're not going to be homeless. We have money in the bank. We own property. We're okay. But still, that is in the back of my mind of oh my gosh. And my dad was very successful in business. And then there was a change in the economy and a change in his industry. And suddenly he was holding on for dear life. So, yeah. And I've even talked to financial people and gone online and what is enough?
Yeah.
It depends, right?
One of my favorite parts about this entrepreneurial journey that I've been on is I feel like, yes, the market, could tank or something weird could happen, and if I was unable to sell real estate for whatever reason, right? when you have been through like all the things that it takes to get a business up and running, you realize like, oh, I could do this again. Like it could be a different industry. There's just a lot of confidence where I see people like worrying about, job loss. And like my dad worked for the big 5 accounting firms his whole life, and there was always mergers and he was always getting transferred, and he never knew like if he was going to have to leave, a city, or if he was going to get fired. And he was like, you need to work for yourself.
Yeah.
And that was really powerful
that's
for
the
me.
same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've always, that's one thing. Like everybody's got a lot to worry about, but I've never worried about like, hey, what if I lose a job, or, even if for whatever it's hard to imagine a scenario where I wouldn't be able to sell real estate. But if that occurred and the market got really bad or whatever happened, or I lost my license for some weird reason, there would be, it's an incredible skill set to have, and mindset, and just confidence of building a business and learning how to get people to trust you and work with you.
My dad said people always need food, shelter, clothing. So keep that in mind, right?
Yeah.
And here I am. I used to work in the coffee industry. Now, could people live without coffee?
Right.
No, probably not. Actually, I couldn't, right?
Right.
But they need housing one way or another.
Yep.
And, sometimes I worry about the market, but I know last year, you said this, 70-something% of realtors didn't sell a single house last year. And last year was my joint second best year
Nice.
ever, right?
It was incredible.
A great year.
And that was a 20-year low in transaction volume last year.
Yeah, I know. I'm really fortunate. And we had some astronomical medical expenses last year, like astronomical. So, thank you to my clients. Thank you to the man upstairs, because somebody was watching out over us last year.
Yeah.
Might get teary-eyed here.
Yeah.
But, I think for me, going sort of looping it back, it's like, if you're looking to get into this industry, treat it like a business. It's not a hobby. It's not because you love houses, right? This is a business. And you're in the business of helping people, and helping people make challenging decisions at times. And you should be in the business of bringing value. What value can you bring? I took my client out yesterday. I'm going to mention his name, Jan. He's my client from Czechia, the Czech Republic. And when I first met him, he said, Robert, just so you know, I'm the biggest in the world. And I was like, okay, great. This is going to be a fun relationship. I took him out yesterday, and he was so incredibly appreciative. Every second sentence was a compliment, and I don't always take compliments very well. And he said, Robert, you really know your He sounded like Schwarzenegger when he said it. And I was like, thank you, Jan. That is a phenomenal compliment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I think that's a good place to wrap up.
All right.
Awesome. Appreciate the time. Thank you guys for listening.
Thank you so much. Talk to you soon.